Welcome to the EntrePastors podcast on YouTube. This is a show that helps pastors think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the EntrePastors podcast on YouTube. My name is Jon Sanders. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show, and you're getting ready to listen or watch episode number 52, where we're going to be talking with our guest about how to launch a low-content business. Now, that's an interesting term that I'm guessing many of you maybe have never heard before. I certainly had not heard this term, although I'm familiar with the concept. So today's guest, her name is Faye Ruch, and Faye has been a huge help to our team at EntrePastors through her business. She has a business where she creates what is called or considered by some to be low content. Now, that's not a derogatory term. It's a concept of like books that are not full of content. So think things like journals and handbooks for different courses and content and that sort of thing. So like Faye is the person behind the brand new workbook that we have for our EntrePastors Roadmap to Financial Freedom. It's a beautiful little handbook that she put together. She took our content and then put it in a workbook form where there's just a lot of white space and margin for people to write. That's one of her specialties. So my desire in sharing her with our audience is, one, maybe some of you, this is something you may consider to be in a similar type of business. And the other thing is I really wanted to introduce her to our audience because I know there are many of you out there who could benefit from her services. And so we have a great conversation with myself, my other co-host, Les Hughes, and then Faye. So I'm excited to share this conversation with you. Without any further ado, here we go. Let's learn how to launch a low-content business with Faye Ruch. Check this out. Well, Faye, welcome to the EntrePastors podcast. We're delighted to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it so much. Good to see
Absolutely.
you guys.
So you're not a pastor, correct? Am I correct in saying that?
That is correct. I am a doctor of pharmacy, and I actually just retired this January. Although I don't like the word retire, I always say I'm rewiring. So,
well, I think we're going to find that in this interview. You've got a lot going on. You're not really sitting on the beach drinking margaritas right now. So
that's correct.
And our audience may be wondering, well, why are we having someone on our show that's not a pastor? First of all, you're not the first non-pastor to be interviewed on the show, but there's a specific reason that I wanted to bring you on and highlight you and what you're doing. But before we get into all of that, why don't you just start with a little bit broader introduction to yourself? Like, where do you live? What you just transitioned out of one role, but tell us a little bit about the stuff you're working on in the world these days.
Sure. Yes. I am located in Naples, Florida. And I did just retire as a doctor of pharmacy in my 28-year career, serving our amazing veterans and military as a doctor of pharmacy. And so, like I said, I'm rewiring. So I definitely have that entrepreneurial spirit. And so I'm working on my multiple streams of income, trying to get the business off the ground. So one thing that you all are familiar with is that I am working on what's called, and I don't really like this term so much, but it's called low content books, but it's not low value, let me tell you. So these are more like journals and workbooks for people like you who are having like programs that you're having a community or programs that you're introducing to people to get them going on their business or their career path. Also with podcasters, I am producing podcast journals so people can take notes. One thing I always say, and I put this in the beginning of my podcast journals, but when we put pen to paper, our minds always take things more seriously. So I'm very visual a person and like to take a lot of notes when I'm getting value out of things I'm trying to learn. So kind of where that stemmed from.
Yeah. Well, you're right. That's the big one I wanted to highlight, kind of the big business that I wanted to highlight for our audience for multiple reasons. But tell us about, you mentioned multiple streams of income. So real quick, what are a few of the other things that you're either working on or that you dream about working on? I'd love to hear those as well.
Yeah, so I'm working on, I still want to continue in some of my pharmacy, keep up with my pharmacy and do some consultation in regards to that, more one-on-one concierge service so people can get more like consulting or just personal information to get the most like out of their doctor's visits and try to reduce their pill burden, see if there's things that they can take away. But of course, that's all the doctor's decision. But just some things to help get more value out of their health care. And then I did get my real estate license during COVID, so I'm focusing on new construction in our area with that. And then, of course, we're talking about the journals, and then and my passion is dogs as well. So I have in mind about a dog business as well.
What would your dog business consist of?
Actually, it's super niched. It's down. I'm niching it down to potty training. So
Wow.
the reason for that is because I've done a lot of volunteer work at shelters, and sadly, one of the reasons that people are surrendering their dogs and giving up on them is that they are not getting them potty trained. But I just really feel like there's so much education because it's not the dog. It's like we need to know how to communicate with our dogs so that they can have their home and live happily ever after in their forever home rather than being in a shelter just by some simple training methods.
Yeah, got you. Well, I love all of this stuff you're working on, and I'm glad you highlighted that because again, I am a fan of both, and maybe not everyone is wired that way, but I have the capacity to have my hands in a few different things at once, and that's really something we are encouraging most of our audience that are pastors and find themselves in some form of vocational ministry to be in the marketplace as well with one or more streams of revenue. So I'm grateful that you highlighted those things that you're working on. But let's really focus in now on the business that brought you and our world on a collision course together. You've recently helped Les and I with something big that we've been working on. And in doing that, I just wanted to help kind of share you with our audience because I think there's probably other pastors that could find great value in what you would have to offer them as well. It may not look exactly like what Les and I had done, but they could benefit from the gift that you bring to the table there. So you mentioned it. It's interesting. You said it's, I've never heard this term, low content. Um, and unpack that. And I love what you said. It doesn't mean it's low value, but what does that mean more specifically? A low content type of a product.
Right. So when we think of books, we think about this physical book or ebook that has like 50,000 words to it. But these low content books are really more of journals or workbooks, or even just it could be a book that's just highlighting almost in bullet points, things that we really want to get across. And I think that's important today because our attention span is not that long. So if somebody needs some quick education, just highlighting the points, and it could suit their personality too, that they don't want to sit down and spend 3 hours reading a full-on book. So it's those types of things. It can be a workbook where they fill in information that applies to themselves. Of course, we're all different and we perceive and learn things differently. So people can document in their books, just with a line journal, maybe some prompts in the journals, things that they're listening to. So for example, like a podcast journal, it could be like the episode, the resources that are given in the podcast, who was the guest so they can learn more about the guest, points they're taking away, action steps that they're going to take from the podcast, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So for us specifically, what that looked like, just for so our audience knows, the last few episodes, Les and I have been talking about our new offer, our Pastor's Roadmap to Financial Freedom. It's basically a course that we've built several different coaching packages around. And you really helped us with that workbook portion of it. You were recommended to us by someone on our team. And it was incredible, Faye, to see you take our written notes that were very rough written notes, and you took that and turned it into a very visually appealing workbook that is available now for anyone that jumps into that roadmap to financial freedom. So that's really what you are offering through your business is you can take someone's content and put it in that, workbook format. And as you're saying, there's a lot of different ways that you can present that, but there's a really a visual element to that, and also a lot of white space and margin where you're leaving room for people to capture their thoughts, through the written word, and capture their takeaways from whatever content that they're receiving. So when you started sharing that with us, I just thought there's room for pastors here. Like, pastors are content creators. It's something we do every Sunday. We create content. So maybe share a few ideas, like, how could a pastor benefit from what you have to offer? How could you come alongside of a pastor with your business and help them with the content that they're just naturally creating? What are some ideas that go through your mind as to how you could be of benefit and service to a pastor that's got years worth of sermons or Bible study notes or whatever? What might that look like from your standpoint?
Yeah, so the very first thing that comes to mind is one of the first books I did for my church is it's called My Sermon Notes, but it's a journal that has a verse. I think it's 3 months in the journal, but it's a verse there. It's the sermon notes, some where people can take away their points that they got from the sermon. It has a pastor devotional in there. And also, actually, it's trying to get some space in there where local businesses are putting their ads in there as well. So I know Catholic churches do that in their bulletins, but we're making this a full-on journal where the ads are there for long term. This journal, people generally don't throw away books, so the ad space is there. So really, I'm looking at with that in particular, it's combining church, community, and charity, because some of the proceeds of that are going to a charity as well. So those are things that pastors can consider is, having a sermon journal created for their church, has the logo on the outside, the phone number, and then inside the journal, again, in addition to the sermon notes, has some reflection pages, things that they might plan to do for the week, whoever's writing in the journal,
Yeah.
and that they can inspire them throughout the week.
Now with us, you created this basically as a book that's available on Amazon. Not that someone would necessarily just go looking for this book, but
Right.
it's a self-published book. Is that kind of what you do with all of your products? I mean, because that's where your
That is
printing
correct.
basically comes from, correct?
Correct, because it's print on demand. So if anybody's looking to have a book or journal, even in their business or at church or wherever the space is, they don't have to have a lot of stock. They can just order as they want to. So it is print on demand.
Yeah, and the beauty of that is it allows for, like in our case, if we update our content, we don't have to have now cases of outdated books. We can order what we need, and if we need to change something or we catch a typo and we want to go back and fix it, it's fairly easy through Amazon's, printing. I'm not super familiar with it, but I did publish one book through them, and I know you can go change that fairly simply and make updates there as needed, right?
That is correct. Yes. So yeah, like you said, that's the beauty of it. You can make some changes. There's a few things you can't change, but you can definitely change the content, some of the cover work.
Yeah. So how did you get into all this? Like, what was it that caused you to, and where did you find that gifting to be able to do that? Because it's a simple concept, but it's not necessarily simple work to be done. I fully appreciate that as someone who over the years has tried to make things, many different things for church visually look decent, whether it's for a PowerPoint presentation or a PDF or some kind of handout. And that takes a special gift and a skill set. So how did you find out you had that, and how long have you been doing this business specifically?
Well, the business specifically, I've just really gotten more into it this year since I've not been working in my full time job. But I did take a course on how to make these books back, I think in 2019. Out of our 48 days community, I learned of someone who was teaching the course. So I did that. but I've always just been a very like organized or try to be organized. It doesn't always work out as planned, but
No.
but yeah, I like to be organized and I've always liked to write and I always have liked to do some drawings and like pens for me, like having an array of colored pens, so it's just kind of this artistic side of myself that and plus my organized self that kind of and my love of books and paper and writing that sort of thing. I think that's kind of over time just all came together. And then I used to love doing crafts, when I was younger. And now I'll call this in a way a little bit of my internet crafts.
There you go. I like that. So if a pastor wanted to reach out to you and connect with you, what would be, what's the process for working with you and having you serve them in that capacity?
Yeah, so we can definitely, if you don't mind, put a link in the show notes how they can get in touch with me. But it's Faye Faye at Faye's Labs FAYELABS.com. So that's my
Fantastic.
email.
Yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes for that, and I would highly encourage our audience to do just that. I'm not wrapping up the interview just yet. I want to talk to you just a little bit about launching a small business. Again, you're not a pastor, but what you share in common with many in our audience is that you are an entrepreneur and that you've got multiple things that you're looking at developing and working on. So I want to pick your brain a little bit about some of that. So, how has it been for you transitioning out of your career that you spent a lot of time in and now starting to think about, well, what do I want to do in the next season of life as I, serve people and also get paid to do that and make an income from that? How's business basically is what I'm asking. What have been some of the fun parts? What have been some of the challenges of launching your own business like this?
Well, the fun part is I love creating, so that's very fun for me, and I love being in a community. So I'm in a couple of masterminds, so um, actually 3. Um, so that's been really great making connections. 'Cause it really is about connections because that's how us 3 came together is through a connection and in a community that we're all in, as well as by someone on your team and knowing me. So that's really fun because I'm definitely a people person. That's why I served in the medical profession for the 28 years. So I want to continue that on. It is quite different, being in the medical profession is pretty much a corporate type thing. So going to the entrepreneurial space is quite definitely has its challenges, but I'm always up for a challenge. So that's exciting to me, but it is also like a lot of scary things that, fear and questioning myself and that sort of thing.
I want to pause you real quick. So hold
Yeah.
that thought. I just want to go back a minute because a connection just was formed in my mind. So you're coming out of a medical profession, very corporate, and now you're moving into entrepreneurialism. I think there's a theme in there many pastors could relate to because even though the industries are different, so to speak, it still is kind of a corporate professional thing that is more structured. And now you're coming out of that, or we're challenging pastors, not necessarily to come out entirely, but to, in addition to go out into the marketplace and launch something entrepreneurially. So I want to hold that thought about some of the scary, challenge parts of that. But backing up, I also want to hear you say more about something. I just want to highlight something you said, and that is the relationship, the value of being connected in your case, that you're in 3 different masterminds. And I love that you pointed out the reality that this little piece of business with Entre Pastors came about as a result of some of those connections that you have invested into, that you're a part of. And we also, Les and I, have also invested into some of those things. And as a result, our worlds get brought together. You get a little bit of business from us. Now you're on the podcast, hopefully getting exposed to others. I just want people to hear, because I sometimes sense a reluctance in a would-be startup entrepreneur, that reluctance to invest in relationships through a mastermind or a coaching group or a cohort of some sort. Maybe they're tempted to just see the price tag and go, ooh, I'm not making any money yet. I don't want to make that investment. They don't see it as an investment. So I love that you highlighted that. And I would love for you just to double down on that and say just a little bit more about the value of those connections starting in business and having invested into those types of relationships.
Yeah, so it's unbelievable how many connections I've made. And there, you, people say in the entrepreneurial world, it's a lonely business. It really is if you don't have any connections and if you're trying to do it all on your own. I mean, there's a lot of things I do on my own, like in the creation space, because of, it's some part of it that I enjoy. Two, I want and need to make the income in order to be able to like start building a team of people to work with. But it's priceless being in community,
Yep.
because it's just otherwise it's like you the internet is like an abyss of like you can get lost in there. And but it's not all about just being on the internet. It's amazing how everything is intertwined, and it really can be a small world about who knows who, and you can just feed off each other's businesses. It's amazing. So
Yeah.
anybody who has any reluctance, I would just say you just got to trust the process and be in a community. You have to
Good.
do it. You
Mhm.
learn so much like that you can't learn on your own.
Yeah. Good.
Faye, something you just said was really part of an answer to a question that I had, because I know so many people are listening that, like you, they're creatives, which means in addition to some other things that you got a lot of good ideas and a lot of things that you'd love to
Too
do.
many.
And you had to get well, I don't know about that, but a lot. So you had to start somewhere. So I'm wondering, how in your own mind did you? John and I are really big on starting out with mindset, and this is one of the reasons, because it really takes focus and intentionality and starting to think in a straight line instead of just having a vision, of what could be one day. So what were some things, just going back in your mind, that you did to really get started? Like, how did you narrow that down and just get started in something before you try to do everything?
Yeah. So really the first thought I can well, the first thing I can think about in regards to that is when I bought a very first course, it was a course on writing, because I just wrote on my own and just more about my thoughts and journaling and that sort of thing. But I really had a desire to write a book. So I wanted to get this course, and I thought it was super expensive. So I just started off, and I talked to my spouse, because I didn't want to just, again, you don't want to do it alone. You got to have you want to have some support.
Mhm.
So we talked about it, and then I saved up the money and went for the course. And then it just really spun from there, because I caught the I caught the entrepreneurial bug by doing that.
Yep.
Mhm.
And yeah, so yeah, that was my first thing about that. And then I'm a big Dave Ramsey fan, so I got financially. That's how I learned about Dan Miller and getting into that group, 48 Days to the Work and Life You Love. So it just kind of spun from there.
That's
Yeah.
great. So when you first began, how much did that willingness to make that, have some skin in the game financially, how much accountability did that give you to really take action and start doing it?
Oh yes, definitely. And there's so much stuff that's out there free on the internet, but trying to piece things together by yourself
Mm,
not easy. It's not
mm.
organized. I'm an organized person, so that just drives me nuts trying to figure it all out on my own. So it was so valuable just to get into a course, get some organization, because I just learned so much. It wasn't just about writing, it was, partly about how to start something on my own. At least it was a jumping point for me to figure out where I needed to go from there.
Yeah, I love the action. I mean, that's one of the big things we challenge our audience with often, Faye, is just take action, that there's opportunities waiting for you on the other side of action. But if you just sit back and wait until all the conditions are perfect or what you think feel perfect, you're going to be waiting a really long time. And it's often once we start moving forward with a plan that we start to see the next step open up and the path becomes clear before us. So I love that. I always applaud that action taking when I see that. in the life of an entrepreneur. So here, I want to go back to that question about, maybe the struggles or the challenges or where you might feel stuck or some of the things you've encountered along the way. I might ask it in kind of a fun way if you want. I might ask it, if Les and I could solve one problem for you in your business today, what would that problem be? Is there anything that comes to your mind right now?
I would probably say, and I was going to say this at some point, I think clarity is so key to, because like I said, I have so many ideas and try to narrow, like my personality is that I love a variety. Boredom is my enemy.
Mhm.
So, but also it can be something that prevents you from taking a lot of action on one thing. So, so I'm pretty clear now, but I think it took me a while to get to that point. So, and like you said, the action thing is so big because it's a lot of fear in there about, oh, is anybody going to want this? Or I'm not the expert on this, and I'm learning. But people don't know as much as you on a lot of things, and they're wanting to learn. So I just kind of try to think about that every single day. And then I'm taking the strangest secret 30-day challenge right now too, which is listening to positive motivation to keep you going forward. So,
Yeah.
like you said, everything, you got to take that action. You have to
Yeah.
take that action.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say there is that clarity has been one of your big struggles. And it's really just cutting through all of the ideas, which I agree with something Les kind of alluded to a minute ago. It's not a bad thing to have lots of ideas. As a matter of fact, I would much rather work with someone who's a big thinker, who has lots of ideas versus someone who has a very small vision and limited ideas of what is possible or what they're dreaming about. But yes, in that there are challenges, because Les and I are both big idea people as well. And so if you don't eventually kind of pick a path and narrow down and really focus and do some of the more boring work, the more sustainable things, it does become it can be a challenge. So I appreciate that. But again, I'm just encourage you to keep dreaming big, keep having the big ideas, but then also building that discipline to stay focused where you need to, because it's a healthy tension. If you go too far
Yes.
one side or the other, you can get out of balance. But the healthy tension is somewhere in the middle there.
And
Yes,
the
I like
real
that.
way to get that clarity, Faye, is to really define what outcomes you're looking for. Like, what are those goals? Sometimes there are financial goals, and that's actually an easier one because then it just comes down to math, what those goals are, and it gets broken down by what the offering is and how many people you need at that amount per offering. And it kind of gets geeky, but that's what you need to do if that's your goal. Your goal might be, though, product oriented. It might be a matter of a certain book or a certain journal, or a certain type of thing that you're working on, or maybe or finishing a course on potty training a dog. That might be one. So the
That's a
clarity
big goal.
comes from really determining what it is that you want, and where you believe God has you, because I know you're a person of faith, where you believe that God has you at this point in time. So that's one of the big pieces of the clarity puzzle. And it narrows it down, because some of those things you mentioned won't take you to the same outcome. You know what I
Mm.
mean?
Right, right.
Yeah.
And it's something I learned not too long ago, but I try to follow this path of thinking. Does it, and this is how I did get to a point of narrowing down some things. It's like, does it fit my lifestyle, the income I want, the passion I have, and the strengths I have? So that's really how I kind of came down, because I mean, my list was like a mile long about things I wanted to do. So, narrowing it down to these 4 things. I'm
That's
So
really
good.
can you give
excited
me
about.
those 4 things again? The income I want, does it fit the income I want? What else?
So I actually call it, I don't know if this is good or not, but I call it the lip service, because it's LIPS. It's for lifestyle, income, passion, and strength.
I'm writing those
But I
down.
shouldn't call it
Lifestyle,
lip
income.
service, because that
Passion and strength. Lipstick. I don't know. We could work with that. It's something with lips. So anyway, I like that. But that's great. And because, that, as you know, having worked with our workbook and putting that together, that's one of the things we talk about under our mindset module is helping pastors answer that question. Actually, it's under the assessment module. What do you want? And that's a question I would contend a lot of pastors have not really wrestled with. They haven't felt permission to wrestle with that question or to say it out loud. Maybe there's some, built-in internal dialogue about, it's not about what I want, it's about what God wants. And we've made it this big spiritual thing to not answer that question for my life. What do I want? One thing that Les and I helped a pastor one time in a coaching call, a breakthrough I think that we really helped them see was, if you are walking with God and delighting yourself in the Lord, you can trust the desires of your heart. We took that from Psalm 37:4, delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. Again, you got to be careful with that because the scripture also says our hearts can be deceitfully wicked above all things. But when we're truly walking with God and delighting ourselves in the Lord, we can trust that desire that he has put in our heart. And it's a fair question to ask, what do I want? Because some of God's will might very well be revealed for our life in that question and in how we answer that. So I love that. I love that you've got a framework for evaluating what fits and what doesn't fit on your entrepreneurial journey. So
if someone has a lot of ideas like I had, and I was trying to sift through, what are the top ones I want to really pursue right now, just on like a scale of like a 1 to 4, just fit the lifestyle I want. If it's a 4, that's that's the top, then that's a good, so just kind of even ranking it on a numerical scale too. But I also encourage people and pastors and, whatever, I feel like whatever work you do that is serving other people is ministry, so that, and I always have a saying like church is everywhere for me. So, I really believe that. And I believe our good work is ministry, no matter what field it is.
Yeah, that's another theme we drive home a lot too with our audience is that sometimes I think church gets in the way of ministry. Sometimes the model we've created, like when we get pastors out into the marketplace, we're helping them find there's a lot of people who need Jesus out here and a lot of opportunity to serve and love on people out in the marketplace and to do it well. So I love that too. Well, Faye, it's been awesome having this conversation with you. I'm truly grateful for how you and your business have served EntrePastors through the simple workbook that you put together. It's simple, but again, it's not simplistic, if that makes sense. Like I truly recognize the talent and the work and the effort that goes into that. And I'm hoping that many others in this audience would be intrigued and say, Faye, what can you do for me and my content? I've got something I'd love to package, whether it's inside of my church ministry or as a part of my business. I hope we can point some other people to you because I've been a very satisfied customer with what you've done for EntrePastors. So thank you so much.
Yes. And
Thank you, Faye.
perhaps if you along with my email, if they want a sample, like to see a sample of a book, I can send you a link for the show notes as well on that. So they can
Great.
Fantastic. Yeah, anything you want included in the show notes, make sure we have it and we'll put it there and people can connect with you. So Thanks so much, Faye. We wish you all the best as you continue to serve people and build your business.
Oh, thank you so much. This was great. Take care.
Well, hey, thanks for watching this episode of the EntrePastors Podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can be notified every time we release a new episode. If you'd like to get connected to other pastors who are learning to think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs, then we invite you to check us out on Facebook. Just search for the EntrePastors Connect group, answer a few of our simple questions there, and we'd love to include you in the conversations. And if you're really ready to go to the next level, then we invite you to join our EntrePastors membership community. When you become a monthly subscriber, you will receive access to courses, exclusive community, and coaching that will help you along in your own EntrePastors journey. If there's anything else we can do to serve you, please visit us at EntrePastors.com, and we will do our best to serve you there. God bless everybody. See you soon.